Hello there, everybody. Okay, how you doing? We're back here today, talking about basically Scottish UK financials here. In particular today, we're going to be talking about the defense figures of what gets put towards defense there in the UK. So the reason I got started looking into the financials, and we'll be looking deeper, and I think I'm in fact going to ask somebody, part of the research community that developed with my other channel, somebody that has a financial background, or at least is good with the numbers and understands a lot of the numbers, at least better than I would. Not that I don't understand them, but somebody who's got a financial eye, somebody who's got that type of eye for this kind of stuff, and see if get them to look through. Hopefully, I'm going to try to make sure it's somebody completely unconnected to, UK, Scotland, or whatever. Hopefully, you can find somebody, completely separated, so that they will have no skin in the game. So that whatever they look into it and find, I can count on it to be objective, and not skewed in any way. Because if they have no skin in the game, they're just going to objectively report what they find, right? So that's something I'm considering. But what I'm looking into here today, though, is the defense figures, and I find it interesting because I can't reconcile the difference between the percentage that Scotland pays towards defense and the percentage that the UK pays as a whole towards defense. So it's interesting. Now, I know some people are going to say, well, England has, way more people. Well, that's true, but it's still based on a percentage of. It's based on a percentage, it's not. The only way that would make sense is that if there's a certain amount that has to be paid, then certain countries would be more hard pressed to pay that. But that's not the way that this generally works. It works as a percentage of the GDP, the gross domestic product. So the fact that the thing we're gonna see here is that the percentage that Scotland pays towards defense is just double of what the UK supposedly is spending towards defense. And I think that's interesting. So I'm going to show you a couple things here, what I'm talking about, so that you can see the numbers. The first thing you're going to see here is actually from the GERS generated there in the UK. And you're going to see basically the expenditures for Scotland. And this that you're going to see is strictly for Scotland. It says it right up at the top that this is the figures for Scotland only. So I just want to point that out. So, all right, here we go. Okay, so folks, the figure I want to call your attention to is right here. Defense, right? So this would be pounds. So this would be basically 3,300,000,000. 3,300,000,000. Is that what that would be? And like I say, it comes out to 4.4% of the total expenditure of the Scottish government. And I want you to see that. This says Scotland. This doesn't say UK, folks. This says Scotland. Okay? 4.4% of the total expenditure by the Scottish government is going to defense. So that's interesting. Okay, so this is stating that in 2017, the UK spent 2.1% of its national, gross domestic product on defense, right? So that's interesting. Why would the UK as a whole average out to 2.1% of GDP, but Scotland's for some reason paying 4.4% of their GDP, right? And then when we look at this here, we see that compared to France, the 1.8% for France and a 1.2% for Germany, and yet Scotland's paying 4.4% of its output to defense. That seems odd. That seems awfully high. And why is Scotland paying so much more than everybody else in the UK? And well, seemingly more than everybody else, because UK is the number 2 spender in terms of NATO and, you know, defense and all that. So UK is the number 2 spender next to the US. So why is Scotland paying 4.4? All right, that's just interesting to me. So, as I said, that's just something that comes off a little bit strange to me. That seems like a very big difference in the numbers there. Because you have to understand that if Scotland is paying 4.4% of its GDP, or expenditures, however you want to look at it, if it's spending 4.4% and the UK is only spending 2.1 as a whole, that means that the other parts of the United Kingdom that aren't Scotland are paying less than probably, well, maybe they're paying 2% or 2.1%, and maybe just because there's so many people in England and Wales and stuff that it just offsets that 4.4. But the fact of the matter is, for it to get drugged down from 4.4 that Scotland's paying, for the entire UK to be spending 2.1% as a total, that means the rest of the UK is paying less of a percentage than Scotland is. And I think that's interesting, because I hear all this talk about Scottish debt, and I hear all this talk. I get nothing specific, and that's why I'm having to dig into this stuff my own self here, because it seems very difficult to get anything specific. Starting to dig into the GERS, and we're gonna start looking through there and making heads or tails out of it. And I now have PDF of the Edinburgh Agreement and the Smith Commission. So I have those PDFs, and pretty soon I'm gonna have a pretty good idea of what's what. But that strikes me as odd, that Scotland is being put at 4.4%, but yet the UK as a whole is at 2.1%. In fact, other countries like France and Germany are at 1.8 and 1.2%. So if there's something out there that somebody has to say about this, that there may be some little difference, I'm open to hear it. But the fact of the matter is the way I see it is, if 4.4% of the total expenditures in Scotland are for defense, that's a high percentage. So I'd be interested to hear anybody's ideas about it. Remember, I respond a lot better to reason than to insults. Just for what it's worth. So, all right. So ultimately it brings me to the fact that I hear a lot of these claims that, Scotland's too small and can't, shift on its own, essentially, is one of the biggest reasons why you hear people ridiculing the idea of independence. And I say ridiculing because that's really what it kind of is like. Scottish people, if they decide they want to be independent, that's their right. And I'm a little bit disappointed with some of the attitudes I see of some of these supposedly democratically, elected officials over in the UK. But you know what? It's politics, and politicians aren't always, the most stand-up people. So ultimately, when I hear these claims being made, in my short amount of time that I've been looking into this, I've already realized that it's not really true. Scotland is very rich with natural resources like fresh water, fishing, just a number of natural resources. The oil, which obviously has been in decline, but it's still going to make them money for a while to come, as they're transitioning into renewable energy, which already in their renewable energy, they're pretty much already meeting their energy nut. They can pretty much provide power for Scotland. They're actually already powering some of North Wales. So they're doing very well in terms of being able to provide for themselves. And that's, in that basic sense. And it's been calculated that they bring, being as small as Scotland is, only 5 million people in Scotland, and such a small part of the UK as a whole, right? But yet they bring a third of the natural resources to the table in the UK. So that should tell you right there that they're in a good position to handle their own. You know, and so that's what I've come to realize when I've been looking into this. And when I listen to people talk on television in the UK and politicians and stuff, they're not acknowledging those things. They're deliberately saying the same things over and over again that can be proven to be dishonest. And so it's interesting to me. So I'm going to play you a clip right here where you're going to see a gentleman who's going to talk exactly the way that is going to say the exact things that, I'm actually talking about right now. He's basically going to say those things that I hear people say, right? And then he's going to be surrounded by a bunch of other people who are, Scottish, and they're going to listen to what he says, and you're going to see them react to him. And it's interesting. So, here we go.
But the rest of it, he was very pragmatic. He was saying there will be no hostility in Europe. We don't want Britain to fail outside of Europe. We want them to. And then he got onto Scotland and went a bit mad. The one question that the one question that nobody can ever answer for me is, if Scotland go on their own, where are they going to get all their money from? Scotland don't have any money. Even if they got the right to draw money from the oil revenues, the oil is running out. There isn't any oil. 60% of their money is. Excuse me.
They have an economy and they are in many ways quite prosperous.
Yes, but 60% of the Scottish economy at the moment is funded by the UK government. They have a higher percentage of people working for nationalised bodies or the government than anybody else. So I don't know where Scotland think they're going to get the funds to survive on their own.
Well, I met an SNP MP the other day after this came up on the show a while back,
right.
Drew Hendry, and actually, fun enough, he passed me a small piece of paper with all the sources of Scotland's income on. Okay,
well, perhaps you could
and there's whiskey and there's oil and else, and I found it again yesterday, having kept it in my wallet for a long time, and I put it on my bedside table, so I'll bring it in and read it to you. But he's got 10 answers to you for that.
Well, I don't accept that Scotland can exist economically on its own. It really, and I don't want it to, because I don't want the Union to break up anyway. I want us to be, great countries. Scotland, Northern Ireland, England, Wales, and even the Republic of Ireland is a close neighbour. I think is a very powerful body of countries.
So Tusk, just to be clear, Tusk was right at the top of the EU and is now not there.
Yes.
Essentially suggested that if Scotland goes independent, it'll get straight back into the EU.
Yeah, but then...
Danger?
Well, complete danger, because it would break up the Union. Why break up the Union? Anyway, if Scotland want to come out of one union, which is our union, why do they want to go into another one where nobody speaks the same language?
Well, the answer to that storm is to do with national identity, right?
Yes.
Right.
I think this is the danger zone. I'm just really hoping Mike doesn't have any plans to go up to Scotland anytime soon.
No.
Why would they want to leave us? Because it's full of lots of English people who think they can make no money. Arguably why they want to leave us, and Europe is saying, come along with us.
But national identity
we will help you become more prosperous.
But hang on, Wales have national identity. They're not always banging on about leaving the Union because they realise that it actually works.
What do you think, Ashley?
I love Scotland.
Well, both my brother and sister live in Scotland, so I'm remaining very silent because I'd hate to be removed from my family, but I don't know.
Yeah, but if Scotland go on their own, Ashley, your sister...
I think Scotland have the right to vote for what they want. I would like to think that we're stronger together. That's what I believe with Europe as well.
Yeah.
But if Scotland have a vote and they decide to go independent, who am I to...
This was always the risk of anybody that wanted the UK to leave the EU.
Yes.
The risk was there would be no UK. So this is where we're headed.
Yeah, it may be, and actually I don't know whether, obviously Boris Johnson has said there won't be a second independence referendum in Scotland, but it may be he can't hold the line on
He
that.
won't be able to hold
I
the
don't
line
know
on
if
it.
he
Nicola
can.
Sturgeon will not take no for an answer.
Anyway, next time you're on, we'll get you on with, I think, Pat Kane and
That could be an interesting
Mike
dynamic.
would be a good combo.
Most people in Scotland don't want to leave anyway. Believe me, I've talked about silent majorities before. When it comes down to it, if there was another independence vote, the Scottish people are not daft. They are pragmatic, and they would say, let's stick with the Union.
Okay, it's always best if we hear that direct from them, so we'll wait till the
the European
next time we've got a chance to. All
They're
right.
not here, so I thought I'd speak for them.
Yeah.
So, you want to know what strikes me about that guy? Is he's sitting there talking all that smack, and then the one host says, oh, well, somebody from the SMP passed me a list of things and da-da-da, this and that and whatever. And the guy's like, oh, well, why don't you hand it on over or whatever? It's like, you holding this strong opinion about Scotland and you have not even looked into that, even that little bit of seeing what Scotland, creates revenue with, without even doing the simplest amount of looking into it. No, because you heard him arguing the whole time. It's all about the Union. It's all about the UK. It's all about the UK. And you know what? That'd be fine. That would be fine if the parts of the UK that weren't England felt represented. But more and more I look at this whole situation, that doesn't seem to be the case. And listening to that guy, I mean, he clearly had no substance to his argument. And he was just, I want the Union. It's about the Union. And that's fine. I mean, I don't begrudge him his desire that he feels that the Union, the UK is better together and all that stuff. I don't begrudge him that. But if you're going to sit there and talk about Scotland, you should probably be looking into it more before you open your big gob. You know what I mean? So, and that's a lot of the problem I have with the people that argue against independence, is that it's nonsensical like that. Now, some good points have been made to me, and I can fully understand. Veterans of the armed forces there in the UK. Yeah, I can imagine. That would be rough. For Scottish veterans to see the UK break up, the Queen and country that they fought for, and all that sort of stuff. Okay, yeah, I get it. I can see where that is a very, very legitimate concern, and I feel very deeply for those people. And like I said, that's why this has to be the Scots' decision, not anybody else's, not Boris's, not Westminster's, not anybody else's. This has to be Scotland's decision, because a huge change has happened that is the opposite of what they were promised in 2014. So that means the Scots should now be able to choose. There's a number of reasons also why. The fact that they voted 64% in Scotland to want to stay in the EU. I tell you what, the numbers for yes, you mark my words, the numbers for yes are going to continue to go up in the next months and year, when people in Scotland find out that they're having to go broke to have enough insulin for their loved ones, so that their loved ones aren't suffering. And I'm sorry, but it's a fact with our current culture, modern day culture. Diabetes is not just a little problem. And for people that are going to be having to buy their insulin now that they're not in the EU, it's going to be pretty pricey. And I imagine that's going to also create a shift. So this is, I think, what's happening. We're obviously going to see it all go and play out and see what happens. But certainly being dismissive, as that gentleman was, of Scotland, being dismissive like that is not going to help. That's going to create more yes voters. For what it's worth, folks. For those of you out there, for you unionists, talking like that guy is going to make more yes voters. So, just my observation. So, anyways, that's about it for this one, folks. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see you.